Welcome to episode 15 of the Goldenberg Destiny Project. In this episode, I want to discuss one of the arguments of the people who deny the Bible against the authenticity of the Torah. They say that the Torah is not true, and I want to discuss one of their arguments. I wrote a book, which I think I've shown before, called The Hesterville Bible Trial, and in this book, it's a fictional story, but at the heart of it is a trial which presents both sides of the issue, if the Bible is authentic or not. You can go to my website at rabbireinman.com and explore the introduction, some of the chapters, and there's also a link to Amazon that you can buy the book. If you buy the book and you decide that you like it, then I would appreciate if you leave a comment on Amazon. That's very helpful. If you don't like it, then you don't have to leave a comment. We're going to focus now on the first 50 years of Avram's presence in Canaan and the land around it. So soon after Avram comes to Canaan, Avram and Sarah, there's a famine, and they go down to Egypt, and of course there's no food in Canaan, so they go to Egypt. Egypt is food is plentiful, it doesn't need rainfall, the land is irrigated by the overflow of the Nile, so that this will be an important factor in the continuing history of the Jewish people. And they go down there, and Parai, the Pharaoh, who is the king of the Egyptian empire, which, I mean, it's not a huge empire, but it's sizable. He's a rapacious man, and he sees Sarah, and Sarah is a beautiful woman, and she's gracious, and she has tremendous presence, really sees her, and he abducts her to the palace. It doesn't work out so well for him, and at the end he realizes that he made a mistake, and he sends Avram back to Canaan, and he gives him gifts. He gives him sheep and cattle and donkeys and camels, and he goes back to Canaan. Meanwhile, Sarah is barren, she cannot have children. She gives Avram Hagar, her maidservant. She says, take my maidservant, I will be built up through her. And Avram does that, and he has a child, and it's called Yishmael. Yishmael is the progenitor of the Arabs. Interestingly, this idea that by giving her maidservant to her husband would be considered as if she has children is something that appears again a little bit later, when Yaakov's two wives also give their maidservants to him to have children. And this idea that is called having children is an ancient Mesopotamian idea. It appears in ancient Mesopotamian records and cuneiforms, and it was only then, like 2000 before the Common Era. Afterwards, it was totally forgotten. In the later antiquity, there is no record of such a custom whatsoever. Nobody ever heard of such a thing. I didn't have children, so I'll give you my maidservant, and then you'll have children with her, be considered like my children. No, nobody ever heard of that. It was very, very, very old. And this appears in the Torah. So these people who deny the Torah, they say that it was written much, much later time, maybe close to 1,000 years after it claims to have been written. How would these people have known that there was such a custom in deep antiquity? How would they know? After Sodom is destroyed and Lot is saved, and he has his two daughters, and he fathers children from his two daughters, and Avram decides that he really needs more distance from Lot, so instead of living where he does, he goes down to live in Gerar, in the land of the Philistine, the Philistines. Surprise! The king of the Philistines, Avimelech, is also a rapacious man, and he also sees Sarah and decides that, Why not? I'm the king. I could take her. And he takes her. And that night he has a dream. And God tells him, you made a big mistake. And he gets up in the morning. He calls Avram. He apologizes. He says that he gives him gifts. He gives him sheep and cattle and donkeys, and he gives a lot of money to Sora, and he invites them to stay and live in the land of the Philistine, in Gerar, to live in the land of the Philistine. And Avram accepts, and he lives there for quite a long time, and eventually Avram and Avimelech make a pact, a non-aggression pact. That means that we won't attack each other. And this pact has an important role in the future of the Jewish people. But this was what happened. He makes a pact. Sarah has a child. Son is Yitzchak. Yitzchak grows up. He is going to be the successor to Avram. He grows up. When he's 37 years old, God tells Avram to sacrifice his son as a test of his loyalty, his faith, and he agrees to do it. Both of them are tested. Avram and Yitzchak, they're both tested because he also knows, and they pass the test, and that proves that how loyal he is to God. And then it's time for a shidduch, time to get married. So Avram sends his servant Eliezer to Haran, to his family, to get him a wife. He sends him with 10 camels. He goes there. He finds Rivka, his niece. He finds Rivka, and she agrees to come back. And they go back. And Yitzchak marries her, and that's the end of Avram's presence in the Torah. We don't hear any more from him, which we could discuss at a different time why that is, but we hear no more from him. The people who deny the authenticity of the Torah, the way they deny it, how do you say, it's not true, you believe it, you don't believe it, they have to have proof. So they have a number of ways that they try to prove it, and they're all, discussed in the book, in Hesterville. But one of the ways is anachronisms. Anachronisms mean, I think I mentioned it in the previous episode, anachronisms means that you write a story set in an earlier time, and you use some kind of something that was not there at the time, but is there in your time. If we would write a story about Napoleon invading, attacking Moscow with fighter jets and tanks, you know that this is not true. There were no fighter jets and there were no tanks. So clearly it was written by a different, the story does not have authenticity, has no value. Somebody wrote it in the future and he made it up, and he put in things that he wasn't aware that they weren't there at the time. It was from his own time, and he put them in. So they want to show from the Torah that the Torah has anachronisms. And one of the anachronisms is that you find camels in the time of the patriarchal age. In the time of Avram and Yitzchak, you find camels. Avram sent 10 camels to Haran. And actually you find camels also when Yaakov decides to give a present to Esav to appease him. He gives him camels. But in archaeology, when they dig down into the ground in different strata, so each stratum they're all one on top of the other. So the more recent ones are on top. When you go down, then you come to the lower ones. That level is, so when talking about the patriarchal age, in that stratum, there are no camel bones in the digs. They don't find camel bones. There are no camel bones. And this is significant. There are no bones. You see, for instance, in a little bit later, a little bit of a higher stratum, when the Jewish people settled in Eretz Yisrael, in Canaan, they have archaeological digs, and they don't find any pig bones. There are no pig bones, and pigs are a very, very efficient way of getting meat. They eat slop, and they produce a lot of meat. So pigs were very, very popular in the ancient world. Maybe today also. I don't know how popular. Yeah, probably quite popular. And they're an efficient way of getting good source of protein. But in Eretz Yisrael, there were no pig bones, which just shows you that at the time, the Isser, the prohibition against eating pigs, goes way, way back. So now, if you go look in those strata, and they don't find camels. So they say this proves that camels at that time were still not domesticated, and they were domesticated at a later time. So whoever wrote these stories was living at a time where there were camels all over the place. So he said, oh, camels, sure, camels. So he stuck camels into the story, but there were no camels at that time. Okay? That's a good question. Let's take a look into the Torah to find where's the first time that there's a mention of camels in the Torah. First time. The first time camels are mentioned are in the gift that Parah gives to Avram. He gave him camels. That's where camels are mentioned. Now, what camels were, they were like a rarity that kings had. For instance, you find kings kept tigers. Right? They had tigers. They got captured tigers. They kept them. They had tigers. Now, if you go look in the ancient digs, you're not going to find tiger bones because they weren't common. People didn't have them. But the kings had animals that they had. They found many, by the way, many inscriptions and scarabs were found from very ancient times that had camels on them. So there were camels. But why were there no camels in the digs? So the reason is because these were like a Rolls Royce. Kings had camels, but normal people didn't have camels. Maybe hedge fund people had camels, but regular people, even like fairly wealthy people, didn't have camels. Abimelech, when he gave a gift to Avram, Abimelech was a minor king. When he gave a gift to Avram, he gave him sheep and cattle and donkeys. He did not give him camels, because Abimelech didn't have camels. He wasn't Parah of Egypt. He was Abimelech of Gur. He had no camels. But so Parah gave him this very fancy gift. He gave him camels. And he didn't use them for his transportation. Because you see, when he went to the Akedah, when he went to Har Moriah with Yitzchak, they went with donkeys. Why didn't they go with camels? Because they didn't take the camels out of the garage. The camels were not used in the street, people. But he kept them and he bred them because they were extremely valuable. He could sell them to other kings. They're very valuable. So he kept them, but he didn't use them. When for his transportation, he used the donkeys. However, when he had to do a shidduch, when he had to send Eliezer, he wanted to impress the in-laws. So there he pulled out his camels and he sent 10 camels to Haran, and that sealed the deal. They saw the camels, aha, this is a good shidduch, and they sent Rivka back. So that's why you don't find camel bones in the digs, but there were camels, and Avram did have camels. That's number one. Number two, the people who deny the Bible deniers, they found another anachronism, which is the Philistines. That's in the Torah. Avram goes down to Gerar, he lives among the Philistines, and there's a Plishtim, and he's there, and he makes a pact with the Plishtim, and this is about 2000 before the Common Era, and they say that you see from Egyptian writings that the Philistines didn't come until maybe 1,000 years later. They say about 1100, but it's not clear when you get down there. It's not the dating is not exact, but it's pretty close. It was like about 1,000 before the Common Era, and they called the people of the sea people, and they invaded the Mediterranean coast, and they established a country. Well, they didn't really have a king then, but they had 5 cities. They were generals. The cities were Gaza and Gas and Ashdod and Ashkelon and Ekron. These are the 5 cities of Plishtim. And these cities don't appear in the Torah, they appear in Sefer Yeshua. And they came about 1,000 years before BCE, 1,000 years before. So how could there be Plishtim at the time of Avraham, which was another 1,000 years into the past, and the Plishtim hadn't come yet? So clearly it's an anachronism. The writers were living at a time when there were Plishtim, so when they made up the story, they had Plishtim. This is their argument. There's another question, by the way. There's another question. Plishtim was in the Gaza Strip. They came and they settled and they conquered and occupied the Gaza Strip. The Torah says when the Jewish people came out of Mitzrayim, came out of Egypt, after their captivity during the Exodus, so God did not want to take them through the land of the Plishtim because they might have to confront, they'll have wars, and they'll be scared and they'll run back to Mitzrayim. They'll run back to Egypt. But otherwise, if they had the courage to confront battles, then they would have gone through Eretz Plishtim. Otherwise, they would have gone through Eretz Plishtim. Eretz Plishtim and the Gaza Strip. When you go through the Gaza Strip, you're already by Tel Aviv practically, just a short jump from Yerushalayim. How are they ever going to get to Har Sinai? Har Sinai is in the desert. It's in the south, in the Sinai Peninsula. So what was his intention if they hadn't been afraid? He would have taken them through Gaza, then turned around and gone back down to, what's the point? This is a difficult problem. Some of the anachronisms talk about this. If you look in Parshas Noach, when the genealogy of Parshas Noach, he goes through Cham. Cham had a son, Mitzrayim, and Mitzrayim had children. So I'm going to read you the pasuk. Ves pasrusim, ves kasluchim, ashiyotsu misham plishtim, ves kaftoirim. So there are 3 groups here. There's the pasrusim and the kasluchim, that they were the progenitors of the Plishtim, ves kaftoirim and the kaftoirim. There was 2 groups, the Plishtim and the kaftoirim. Who are the kaftoirim? Well, let's look in Yirmiyah. Kishodad Hashem Plishtim she'eres I kaftor. Hashem destroyed the Philistines, the remnants of the island of Kaftor. So we're not sure exactly where Kaftor is. It may be Crete, it may be some other Mediterranean island or an island in the Aegean Sea. But Hashem will destroy the Plishtim, who are the remnants from the island of Kaftor. So the Plishtim are from Kaftor. But in Noach we see that the Plishtim and the Kaftorim are 2 different peoples. Now let's go on in Amos. Amos says, Halo Yisrael Halisi Meres Mitzrayim Uplishtim Mikaftar. I brought the Jewish people from Mitzrayim and the Plishtim from Kaftar. Again, we see they come from Kaftar, and it seems to be that they're coming at the same time, which agrees with the Egyptian inscriptions that they came about the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim. About the time of the Exodus, the Plishtim came from Kaftar. So they did come later, and we see that there are 2 groups of Plishtim. There's the Kasluchim, the Pasrusim and the Kasluchim, and there are Kaftorim, 2 different groups. So look in Devarim. In Devarim, Moshe Rabbeinu on the Arvis Moav, they're on the threshold of Canaan, they're ready to go in, and he gives them the lay of the land, the political lay of the land, who the peoples are, whom you're allowed to attack, whom you're not allowed to attack. And he says you cannot attack Edom, you cannot attack Moav, you cannot attack Ammon. And then he says like this, and he talks about all the different people that are living there. So he says, V'ha'avim ayoshvim b'chatzeirim, the Avim, who are living in open cities, Kaftorim hayoyt, this is the pasuk, Kaftorim hayoytzim mikaftor, the Kaftorim, who came out of Kaftar, Hishmidam v'yashu b'mekaimam. The people that came from Kaftar, which we see are Plishtim, the Plishtim came from Kaftar, and they destroyed them. I don't know if they totally exterminated them, but they basically conquered them, and they lived in this land of the Avim. They lived there in their place, which is Gaza, which is the Gaza Strip. So what is the pasuk telling us? So Rashi says like this: the Avim were also Plishtim. They were also Plishtim. Of course, it has a pasuk in Yeshua that there were 5 generals of Plishtim. There was the Azati, Ashdodi, Ashkeloni, Gati, Akroni, Viha Avim. And the Avim were also Plishtim. But there was a pact that Avram had made with Plishtim, with Avimelech, so they couldn't attack them because he made a pact. And he couldn't attack them. So in order to allow the Jewish people to conquer the Gaza Strip, therefore he brought forth the Kaftorim from Kaftar, this other group of Plishtim. He brought them out to come in here, to go into Gaza, and to knock out the Avim, who were the people of Gerar, who Avimelech's people were the Avim, go in there and take it over. And the Kaftorim, Avraham never made a pact with the Kaftorim. He only made a pact with the Avim. So therefore, they could conquer the Gaza Strip. This is what Moshe was telling them. So this explains everything. Gerar was not in the Gaza Strip. The archaeologists found a small Tel Haror, and they said that must be Gerar. And they excavated it, and they found there was a tiny village near the other cities of the Gaza Strip. So that was Gerar, but it doesn't coincide with what the Torah tells us about Gerar. Gerar was a royal capital. Avimelech lived there. Of course, that was not Gerar. This little Tel Haror was not Gerar. Gerar was much further to the south and to the west. Below the Gaza Strip, the northern Sinai Peninsula, that's where it was. That was Gerar. That was Plishtim. Maybe it also included the Gaza Strip, but it was much larger than that. And Gerar was in the northern Sinai Peninsula. So Avram went to Gerar, and that's where he lived. It had nothing to do with the Plishtim that came 1,000 years later. And that's why when the Torah says that when the people coming out of Egypt, God would have taken them through Eretz Plishtim, it doesn't mean the Gaza Strip. It means Gerar. It means the land of Gerar. That's what it means. So if you look carefully at the Psukim, look carefully into the Torah, all these issues are resolved. There is no anachronism here. There were Plishtim then, these were the Avim, these were the Kasluchim and the Pasrusim and the Kasluchim. These were the people of Gerar, and there was a pact with them, and there was another group of Plishtim who came from Kaftar, and they were the people of the sea that appear in the Egyptian inscriptions, and they conquered Gaza, and they never went into Sinai. So I just want to show you, I've shown you this map before, but this is in the Art Scroll Mikros Gdolos, which I have to praise, excellent, and they got it right. Eretz Plishtim is here. Gaza Strip is here. Eretz Plishtim is all of this. This is the Eretz Plishtim. And this is where Avram went. And this is where God would have taken the Jewish people when it came out of Egypt. They would have gone into Eretz Plishtim and then turned east and gone into the desert and reached Mount Sinai. And that would have been much quicker and easier than going all the way back around and coming up through the desert. I want to remind you once again that this topic is a very broad topic. We will discuss it at a little greater length when we get to the 19th century. In the meantime, if you're interested in the topic of the authenticity of the Torah, this is the book, Hesterville, and you can get it at RabbiReinman.com. Please click the button below to follow me. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you again next time. Thank you.